Bonjour everyone, and welcome to Paris in 1855. There is no Eiffel Tower yet, but we do have the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe as the background for today's historical field trip. Shall we just get right into it?
Let's get right into it.
Alright. So the official name of the Paris 1855 World Fair is...
I'm scared for this.
Exposition universelle des produits de l'agriculture, de l'industrie et des beaux-arts de Paris.
Oh my god. I'm trying to decide if it actually is more of a mouthful than the last one, or if it just feels like that because it's also in French and my brain dropped off like 3 words in.
Right? I'm like, everything just seems so much longer and fancier in French.
I was like, I could translate, I could understand in my head till about 3 words in, and then I was like, whoop, nope, lost that one, and then like lost the plot for the rest of it.
I mean, it's actually fairly easy to translate. It's the Exhibition Universal of Products of Agriculture, Industry, and Arts in Paris.
Yeah, if I'd seen it written out, I probably could have gotten it. By hearing it, I was like, whoa, no.
But yeah, the theme of the fair is basically, as I just said, agriculture, industry, and art compared to London's theme of industry of all nations.
Okay, interesting.
So as I've said in the introduction to World's Fair podcast episode, France loved their fairs. And they loved to try to one-up the other nations who thought that they could compete.
What? France is competitive? Really? Wow.
I know! And this one was...
Never would have guessed.
And this one was no exception.
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon III was the Emperor of France at this time, and he took one look at London's World Fair and said, "We can do better."
I'll bet he did.
And so he rebuilt a Place de l'Industrie for the 4th time, and on an even grander scale than its predecessors.
Naturally.
And yes, I really said a 4th time.
The 4th time. Rebuilt from scratch, or like rebuilt as in kind of like
from
the
scratch.
Glass greenhouse from last week? Okay.
From scratch.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, like, as I mentioned in the introduction episode for this series, many buildings for the World's Fairs were not meant to last. This particular building was built and then torn down in 1839, 1844, and 1849 before being rebuilt for this 1855 fair in approximately 1852/1853.
Oh my god, that's so much work. At that point, why not just make a permanent statue? Like, why?
Because they are crazy.
Why? That's so much extra effort.
So, the palace itself was 850 feet long and 344 feet wide. So even though it was absolutely massive, it still didn't have enough space for all the vendors, and 2 temporary buildings had to be built alongside of it to house the rest.
Wow.
The art displays were the ones that were mainly housed in these side buildings. And a 3rd building was actually constructed by an artist who was not invited to the fair so that he could still show his art unofficially.
Oh, boo! The poor guy. He's like, well, I'm getting in anyway.
Yeah. Construction...
You can't stop me.
Construction was not complete until opening day of the fair, and the building had extremely poor ventilation, making it super hot inside.
Again, with the heat stroke conditions, why are we trying to give mass amounts of people heat stroke? Why is this the goal?
I have no friggin' clue. But I'm like, it's also like, it kind of reminds me of Disneyland, because like Disneyland wasn't even finished being built until opening day. That like, when people were walking into Disneyland, the concrete hadn't even set. And so like, women in their high heels were literally like sinking into the concrete as they were walking.
It's so bad.
So I'm like, it was basically like the Disneyland of 1855.
We had a whole episode about Disneyland. You didn't mention that. That's awful.
Because that wasn't like dark Disney. That's not dark Disney. That's just Disney facts.
It's just a weird Disney fact, yeah. Oh my gosh. Right.
So this palace was demolished in 1897 to make room for the 5th Place de l'Industrie for the 1900 World Fair, which we'll get to in a later episode.
Holy.
But at least this one got used longer than its previous incarnations.
I mean, we'll give it that. Oh my god.
All right, so some of the stats for you guys. The fair history books say that just over 5 million people attended the expo.
Okay.
Which is 1 million less than London's the year before.
That's what I was going to say, given the competitiveness of France on this one.
Yeah.
That's a little amusing to me.
So France actually separated that number into about 4.2 million for the industry side. So 4.2 million into the palace for the industry stuff. And 900,000 into the art buildings.
Okay.
Which would, as I said, be about 1 million less than the London Fair, which they're trying to beat, which I'm like, suckers, you didn't beat the London Fair on that part.
It's almost like they're trying to, like, confuse you by breaking it up into smaller numbers and just be like, no, we're not going to give you the numbers overall. It just looks like it's less because we're split into 2 sections. It's like, no, it still adds up to be less, though.
Right? So the expo cost probably about double what London spent at about 2 million USD, I believe. And covered a much larger scale at about 16 hectares of land. Sources vary on how many countries attended. One source says 25, which would be the same as London. Another says 28, and another says 34.
Okay.
I'm going to go with...
we have no idea.
No, I'm going to go with the number 28 because that's what the BIE has on their website, which is the overarching World's Fair Bureau, and I'm going to hope that they have their information correct.
They're probably the most reliable source. Then, yeah.
Going back to the money side, while London had a profit from their fair, which they could then use to further their innovations, France apparently left the fair with a deficit of 8.3 million francs.
Oh my god. Yeah, that yikes.
I'm hoping that the source I got this number from had a mistake, but the other sources seem to corroborate, as they mention that the fair only took in 3 million francs to the 11 million spent. I have no math skills when it comes to conversions, and any conversion website that I went to would not do the math up to 11 million francs for me, as I think that they thought I was insane for asking them.
Oh my god.
So I literally just use whatever resources and their numbers. So, like, if any of my numbers for this series are wrong or seem off with these historical fairs, just forgive me, because I literally don't do numbers.
That's a big loss. That's a lot. That's a huge deficit.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Like, France maybe should learn from the idea of trying to one-up everybody and just be like, we're just going to do the fair and not, like, try to one-up people. We're just going to do it, like, I don't know, at a normal person's pace.
It's a little bit of an egg on your face to be like, we're going to make a fair that's better than London's and spend all that money only to not make a profit on it. Like, that's pretty rough.
To, like, make a massive deficit compared.
Well, yeah, like, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. So let's just move on to something that my brain can comprehend. The exhibits and other fun things.
Yay!
As with most fairs, Paris 1855 had a lot of firsts to unveil between themselves and the other countries in attendance. So before looking at the innovations that were shown off in the exhibit halls, there was one big innovation that was in the works from France, especially for this expo. The Bordeaux wine classification system.
Okay.
So Napoleon was extremely keen on having this system in place so that experts from around the region could gather to taste, sort, and rank each wine based on the various chateaux' reputations. The red wines were classified into 5 divisions, with only 4 wines making it into the top class.
All right. That's pretty...
Yeah, like, the Bordeaux wine classification system is, like, the number one, like, wine classification system.
Do we still use that today?
Yes.
Cool.
So of the 61 wines that were classified, only 1 was from outside the Medoc region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of checks out. That kind of checks out.
This system would remain unchanged for over 100 years until 1973, when another wine would finally be promoted and there'd be 62 wines classified as Premier Grand Cru.
Ah, look at that.
Right?
That's pretty exclusive.
Yeah, it's like
That's actually
super
like,
exclusive. Like,
yeah. Like genuinely good for them, but it does seem like there's a pretty obvious bias built into their system. If,
oh yeah, there's like a massive bias.
Our wines are the best wines, and no one else's wines can compare. It's like, yeah, sure, okay. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm also not a big wine person, so maybe I can't really like, speak to this very much at all. All wine to me, like, maybe I just haven't had the right kind or something, but like most wine to me just tastes like I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big wine person.
Yeah, no.
I like the sweeter, fruitier ones, but like I'm not a big wine person overall.
Yeah, I used to just drink like rosé or like a fruit wine when I could drink.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now a quick fire of the other innovations on display. We had the first ever lawnmower.
Cool.
Moore's washing machine, which was nothing like what we know a washing machine to look like now, of course.
I'm very curious about what that did look like.
One of the first ever non-industrial Singer sewing machines.
Okay, cool.
An exhibit that Kat would have loved.
Yes.
Which was the first ever speaking doll.
No, I hate that. That sounds awful, actually. As a matter of fact, why on earth, why? That sounds like nightmare fuel. I kind of hate it.
And an exhibit that Kat actually would have spent her entire time at. A massive hydrostatic percolator.
A what?
So this percolator could dispense over 50,000 cups of coffee per day or 2,000 cups per hour.
Okay, I'm there. You're right. I am a coffee fiend.
It was right next to the speaking doll. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, God. It's like, in order to get to the coffee, you do have to go through the room with the talking doll. Like, absolutely not. You know what? Maybe I can sneak around the side.
In the center...
I want to know how the talking doll worked, though, because it's not like they had, like, recording devices in the same way that we do now. So, like, how did that work?
I don't know. I didn't look that far into it.
I'm afraid of it, so I want to know.
I'll do a whole episode on speaking dolls for you of history.
How about we skip that one, actually? So
you asked the question.
But I'm curious about this one specifically, about, like, how it functioned. Just because, like, the technology at the time doesn't seem to lend itself to it. I want to know.
In the center of the palace, where the ceiling was the highest, is where visitors could gather to stand in awe, or take a seat at one of the massive water fountains, while they listen to one of the many pipe organs, or examine a statue.
I'm sorry, I'm distracting myself over here. I googled it just to find out the talking doll thing, and there's a picture of it, and it's so much worse than I thought it was.
Yeah, why would you do that to yourself?
Its body is metal.
Yeah.
Like,
it probably has like one of like the roll.
It's so creepy. It's okay. It was the world's first recorded audio product designed, manufactured, and sold for home entertainment. It was a costly venture for Edison and his investors, who ceased sales after only about 1 month on the market. Oof.
Yeah, because it probably wasn't that cuddly for kids.
Recent technological advances in audio recovery methods are making more historic sounds available to hear. Oh no, there's an audio file. There's an audio file of what it sounded like.
Yeah, don't click on that.
I'm not going to.
Because that will actually give you nightmares.
That will be nightmare fuel. It's saying, hang on, their software analysis revived the voice of a young woman reciting the first stanza of the nursery rhyme, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." That's so creepy. So the doll sang "Twinkle, Twinkle," or a version of the doll sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, little star." It sounds like.
Yeah, you could probably switch out, because it would have been like I can't remember right now what they're called, but like you would record onto like almost like a tin can.
Yeah.
Like, that was like your first, like, not like a record, but like the first like version of a record.
I know what you're talking about, like a music box sort of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of device.
So
yeah,
you
I
know
what you're talking about.
Switch it out, and so like there's probably a way to switch it out and stuff, right?
Yeah, so it sounds like it was something like that, but the idea of like a woman's like tinny voice singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star coming from that monstrosity, that's terrifying. Can we put that on the Instagram so that other people can suffer with me?
Sure. I'll make sure
Cool.
to put that in. Now come back to the water fountains and listen to the pipe organs.
Yeah, sorry, I'll pay attention.
Examine
again.
a statue.
It's so creepy. Okay, so
With
water
your cup of
fountains,
coffee from your percolator.
statue, percolator, ignoring the creepy doll. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Any sort of heavy machinery like locomotives or hammer mills or ventilation systems, which really they could have just installed one of the exhibits into the friggin' palace.
Oh my god. That could have been the exhibit. They could have been like, feel this nice, cool, like satisfying air. That could have been the exhibit,
right?
but no.
Those were in a designated annex of the palace. So,
naturally,
inside one of the separate buildings was the art portion of the expo, save for the statues which were deemed worthy enough for the center of the palace.
Of course.
Most of the art in this building were paintings by a man named Eugene Delacroix, and then a large section solely dedicated to the French Realism movement artists.
That makes sense.
As I said earlier, there was also an artist who made his own building, which was unofficially part of the expo.
I love that. I love that.
This was...
Like if you won't let me in, I'll just give you a whole extra building. And
exactly.
I'm just gonna put it here, and you can't do anything about it.
This was Gustave Courbet, and he displayed about 40 of his paintings in his own expo that he called the Pavilion of Realism.
That is such a baller move. Like, that's so, like...
Right?
Like, that's such a power move.
So the most famous of his paintings in this exhibition is called The Painter's Studio. It is a very sepia-toned piece where the focal point is the nude woman in her sheet, super not covering her body, peering over the painter's shoulder, being literally the only real pop of color. And the painter isn't even painting a nude scene in this painting, but a forest landscape. And it's honestly a little confusing to like, the modern mind, because there's like all these other like fully dressed people behind behind like the painter's easel, like just randomly about. There's like a pile of people behind them, like just watching the painter painting, and then this random nude woman just peering over his shoulder. He's just painting this lovely forest landscape. There's even a small child.
Oh.
With their dog right there, and then just this random nude woman who's like the only color.
I wonder if that's meant to be a reference to like a muse or something.
That's what Grant thought. Like when I said to my husband, like, what like, the hell is this?
Real. Like if she stands out so much from everybody else, it kind of gives like, is she just in his head kind of thing? Like, I don't know. My first thought was like, oh, that could be an interesting piece where it's like the model is peering over his shoulder about like what she doing, how you making it look good, does it like, you know, like that kind of thing. But if there's like a whole crowd of people and he's painting a landscape, I like my only guess is that she's supposed to be somehow like the muse.
Yeah.
Like from the Greek stories.
But I was just like, what is the point of this poor nude woman other than to have a nude woman in the painting?
Yeah, I mean really, like that's the other gas. Is I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt, but that is the other gas.
I'm like, there's like another like older woman who's just completely dressed, standing right there watching, and I'm like, okay, but again, like it's the 1800s, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, but all of that aside, many famous visitors attended the fair as they did in England. But one such visitor may surprise you all. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert came and were shown around by Napoleon himself.
Fascinating.
So
that,
rather than just take them through the fairgrounds, Napoleon decided to take them on a small tour of Paris itself as well.
Okay.
So one interesting location that they visited was the coffin of his predecessor, Napoleon Bonaparte, not yet buried.
Oh. What? That's so dark.
Yeah.
Buddy, you're a diplomat. You can't be showing off, and here's the dead guy that I took over from. Like, that's not a tourist location, my guy.
Apparently, it is.
He's not even buried yet.
No.
It's like, no. That's not how we do this.
I mean, it's Napoleon Bonaparte. Like, he's fucking famous.
Sure, but he just died. Like, like, he's not even buried yet. Like, a
No.
little respect. He's still a person. Like,
Yeah, apparently
oh,
not.
Wow.
So the British
Wow.
monarchy won over the French population, and
Okay.
Prince Albert ended up leaving with a piece of fine art purchased by Napoleon for them from the art pavilion from the fair, worth
This
about
backfired so bad.
25,000 francs at the time.
Oh my god, that's probably part of the loss in that profit that they didn't make.
Those Napoleon's like, woohoo! Everybody loves
That's-
you. Here's some art from our fair.
This backfired so hard on them. They're like, we're gonna have this competition and show we're so much better than the British, and then everyone's like, no, actually, we love the British. Like, well, then
Yeah.
I guess we love the British. Like,
Yeah. So,
that's so funny. That's so funny.
before we get to another interesting piece of history from the fair, let's do our look at Canada's role during this expo. Speaking of loving the British,
Yeah.
even though we were a British colony, we were also partially a French colony, and thus we petitioned for an even greater scale of representation than at the 1851 fair.
Nice.
And this... What? Yeah.
I'm presuming that Quebec had a lot more to do with the
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Checks out.
This time, our goal was a little different, as we were actually getting closer to looking at Confederation. Instead of being a child needing Britain as a parental unit, organizers wanted Canada to be seen as a possible colony with a global position.
Okay.
Of course, we also needed to establish the regional interests of the French Canadians as well.
Okay. We mentioned dates, but remind me, was Canada its own country at this point yet?
No.
Not right. Not yet, right? Okay.
No, we were still looking at, they were getting closer at looking at Confederation. So we were actually starting to look at how do we feasibly leave Britain.
Yeah, and like, how do we move out of Britain's house?
Technically not leave Britain.
The child thing.
So we become a country, but we don't fully leave Britain until like the 1980s.
And even then, like, we still have the Prime Minister and the British royalty.
The ambassador to Britain, basically,
Yeah, there's still our figureheads, so they don't have like political power in Canada, but we are kind of technically still
like we're still very intertwined
under Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the article that I used for these first two fairs did not go into as much detail about the actual exhibits for the 1855 fair, but they did talk about our winnings at this fair.
Ooh.
So Canada won 1 Grand Medal of Honor in medals, 13 first-class medals, and 30 second-class medals from the 30 categories that were held. And we also got 43 honorable mentions from the different classes.
Cool.
So this means that we actually did much better in France than we did in England, which was happily reported in the reports done by the French Canadian team that took our exhibits to this expo.
Checks out. Makes sense.
Basically going like, hey, look, we're more popular in France than we were in Britain.
Okay, so France set out to have a world fair that was better than the one in London. They, instead of getting like the British to appreciate the French ended up appreciating the British, but the Canadians were like kind of I'm trying to think of a word to even describe this. The Canadians were kind of enthused by France. Yeah. As a result. So
well, the French Canadian team
kind of worked.
Like it was French Canadians, right? So they honestly did over embellish the report to make us look better by trying to claim that we were the only nation to be able to do most of the winning, which is kind of the point of winning, that there's only one nation to get that title.
Yeah.
So it's like, guys, that's kind of like the winner is the one nation.
Yeah.
So we were the only nation to win because that is the point of the winner.
Technically correct, but like weird way to phrase it, yeah.
But of course the newspapers were all also enthusiastic about our progress on the global stage.
Okay,
including papers from around the world.
Oh, cool.
So one such paper is quoted to have been impressed at Canada's ability to, quote, hew out wealth and independence for themselves from primeval wilds.
Whoa, okay. Primeval wilds?
Yeah.
Come on.
And another commented on our successes with, quote, how they subjugated nature with a rapidly and completeness unknown in any past age of the world, and self-governed and self-relying, tread with confidence in the face of the nations the path of greatness to which their destiny manifestly calls them. With an exclamation point.
It's almost like the people who already lived here lent a helping hand and made some treaties and stuff that probably should have been respected a little bit more. But like,
yeah,
you know, it's almost like they got a little bit of a leg up from the people that lived here.
Yeah. I'm like, I mean, yes, we're a pretty great country, but we made some major mistakes, folks, with how we tread too confidently and kind of screwed over the people who were here before us.
This is the thing. We made treaties with them. They actively helped us, and then we just stabbed them in the back. Like, it pisses me off. Okay. Like, and then we took it over and then took all the glory for taming the wilds. It's like, no, the wilds, like, there were already people living here. Like,
yeah, they weren't primeval wilds.
It's
like there were communities, like they actually had
whole societies. Yeah,
like there was civilization, just not your type of civilization.
Yeah, just because it looked different doesn't mean it wasn't as valid. It was still like yeah. It's been established how I feel about this.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's maybe tone down the praise a little bit.
It's talking as if there's literally nothing, like there was literally nothing here but wild animals and plant life. And it's like, you realize there were whole other people here though. Like there were whole people that were already here, that had already figured out the stuff.
Yeah, but they don't realize that.
Generously share that information with us.
Yeah, they don't realize that. It's the 1800s. They don't fucking care. They don't see anything beyond...
Me, you're an animal and not a person. It's like so close.
They do not see anything beyond their society.
I really can't wrap. I mean, I guess the world wasn't as interconnected as it is now. And like most people didn't have the opportunity to travel or like go outside of their own hometown and stuff. Like I'm not saying I don't understand how it happened. It just frustrates me that it happened.
Yeah.
Because I can't wrap my head around that. Like, around looking at another human being and being like, you must not be a human being. Your hair is black and mine is blonde. Like, wow, that's where we draw the line. Like, you know, like that kind of thing. It's like, it's so superficial.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my thoughts have been established. We can move on.
Okay. So, last but not least, let's talk about one of the still standing structures that was built for the 1855 Paris Expo, which has a unfortunate, sad history to it later in its life.
Okay.
This would be the Pont de Alma Bridge, and it was built to connect the Champs de Mars Expo grounds to the right bank of the Seine River.
Okay.
Like most of the fair buildings, construction of the bridge was delayed because of the Crimean War, but unlike the rest of the buildings, it was not completed in time for the actual fair. So, due to the fact that it was not completed until 1856, the bridge isn't usually officially mentioned in research for the expo, but it was technically meant to be part of the fair, and so I thought I'd mention it anyways, because it's got an interesting history later on.
Okay.
So, on that right bank, there is a tunnel under the bridge, which has a square nearby with a statue called the Flame of Liberty. This tunnel is actually known as an accident black spot, as between 1982 and 1997, there have been at least 11 motor vehicle accidents resulting in death, and many more that did not result in deaths. But one accident stands out among the rest, which happened on the 31st of August, 1997.
Okay.
Not clicking a bell?
31st of August, 1997. in France.
Yeah.
No, not ringing a bell.
So this is the tunnel in which Princess Diana would unfortunately pass away in.
Wait, that happened in France? I thought that was in England.
Nope, it was in France.
Oh. Because I wondered, my first thought was Princess Diana, but then I was like, no, that can't be that can't be right. That's not
Nope,
the right
she was in
country.
Paris with her boyfriend at the time.
Oh, shoot. I didn't realize she was in Paris for that.
Yeah. So the square would be renamed in her honor, and the Flame of Liberty would become an unofficial memorial to the late princess. But the bridge itself was technically built for the 1855 World Fair.
Yeah, even though it didn't get finished.
Even though it didn't actually get finished until just afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
So, small connection there for, like, more current history.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that somber note, we shall leave Paris and pack our bags to head back to London.
Go back on the train.
This time skipping to 1862 for the next World's Fair.
All right. I guess we'll see y'all there.
Yeah, we hope you're enjoying this mini-series, and we'll see you guys all there on this new weird side of history.
Bye.